Hey there! In this video I'm going to draw this fantasy character, this lion warrior character of mine from start to finish. This is essentially a real-time, fully narrated, unedited tutorial where you can hang out with me and I'm just going to draw this thing and you can draw your own thing, do whatever you want. But yeah, let's hang out and draw some cool fantasy characters. Let's get started. Alright, let's get started. I'm Tim Mcburnie. I've been a professional artist for 20 years and a professional drawing teacher for 10 years. And I just want to share my process with you so you can see how I create things. And I like doing these as a real-time, unedited tutorial so you can see exactly how I do it, because I think the pace is really important. It's really important to understand that, drawing this stuff takes time and patience. So even though this is quite a quick overall image, so it's only going to take, in that sort of 1 to 2 hour range to complete, still, drawing is a lot about just having patience and dedication. And that's what I want to share with you in these real-time, fully narrated tutorials. So it's a bit more laid back. It's not your typical YouTube fare where, we're cracking jokes and, it's highly edited. This is more laid back. This is more relaxed. The idea is you can hang out with me and we'll chat about drawing a little bit. I'll share with you the thoughts that I have as I'm creating these things. You're probably seeing the thumbnail being created here. I don't record any narration while I'm doing the thumbnail because I really like to focus. But yeah, that's it. This is just an opportunity for me to share my process with you. If drawing in this style is something you're interested in, check out my quick start guide on line and color illustration. There'll be a link in the description. There I will share with you in a little bit more of a step-by-step fashion exactly the techniques and tricks that I'm using to do this. And I'll go over my general thoughts in that quick start guide about what is really important to do when we are learning a line and color style. So check that out. But other than that, let's get started. Let's jump into this tutorial. So I've got a little thumbnail. It's sort of orange to make sure that it's a thumbnail, to make sure that I don't accidentally keep going and add too much detail. So I'm just going to res it up. We're in Photoshop. And I don't really know how big I sort of want it to be, but something like that. And yeah, I'm going to lower the opacity of this and use it basically just as a guide. So I've just sort of got a guide here. And I'm going to use I think this sort of 2B pencil, which I think comes with Photoshop these days. It's part of like sort of Kyle's brushes. I'm going to set it to black, but I'm going to set the opacity to about 40%. Again, I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So you won't see me click it. And what I'm going to do is see if I can add some structure to what we have here. I might need to actually as I do that, I might just res that. I might just reduce the opacity of that brush a little bit more. And that means I can sort of go a little bit harder with it. So thinking about where this guy is kind of looking, you can see I've sort of got a torso. This is going to be sort of sketchy, right? So it doesn't really matter if we sort of still see a few of these lines, right? So I'm kind of building out that sort of torso. Again, putting in structural lines, but not really, drawing them all the way. So I know where they are. I'm marking them in my head. I've got sort of some basic cylinders for these legs. Right. You can also sort of, again, just sort of mass out rough in, right? Some sort of nice spheres for shoulders and things. Now, let's think about where a horizon line is, because that's always important. I'm going to make a new layer. And basically, it's kind of like at his eye level, really. Like that's sort of where it has to be. Nothing complicated, but good to put that in and sort of make sure we understand that. The other thing we could do, that again, this is mainly for benefit of explanation, right? Because I'm sort of pretty clear on where this sort of stuff is going, but I do have sort of this little sort of idea of a perspective grid in mind, something like this. All right, and again, we can sort of see his center of gravity is probably his head is sort of pushed forward. All right, so we kind of got this dropping down, and bam, that feels like that's kind of hitting halfway between those legs. All right, so we got that sort of heel of the foot, bam, going there, bam. Gonna rotate canvas so I can sort of think about some of this other grid sort of stuff. So obviously this is for a grid going that way. These would be a little grid going to the left vanishing point. And look, that's good enough, hey? So I'm just gonna, oh man, yeah, shouldn't have drawn those in there, hey? Yeah, so let's merge that down as well. So I've got one layer with all that stuff on. One layer with all that stuff on. The trick is not to accidentally draw on it. Alright, so I've got heel, heel, okay? And again, you can draw these, there's a many sort of systems, right? I don't have one system, but again, I'm just gonna sort of connect up the heel. I'm gonna sort of mass in, right, the sort of the calf muscles. It makes it a lot easier to kind of get that ankle there. And again, so that's sort of where we got the sort of frontal plane going. And I'm going to basically find the ball of the foot, which is kind of just that pad, right, that you're, yeah, kind of just up from your toes. Then we're going to kind of connect that in. So this is getting real close. And I think there's a couple of interesting things happen. I'm sort of basing this off an old design I did for this kind of lion style character. And he had these really chunky legs that I kind of liked, right, where he sort of didn't have that ankle thing so much. Again, we can mark in some simple like little anatomy tricks, right? Good one is to remember if you're sort of thinking about, that sort of ankle anatomy here. All right, the inside is higher than the outside. Again, inside of that, those sort of calf muscles, right? This one is often a little bit sort of lower, right? Or the apex is a little bit sort of lower, right? Same thing. Rough in that. So I'm just going to go through basically just rough in all this stuff. Yeah, I think I had him sort of wearing just no shoes. But we'll see. Doesn't matter, right? I'm not trying to match anything. So I'm just roughing in, massing in the big toe, right? Let's mass in that other big toe. Make sure again let's sort of push the feeling of that foot being splayed, right? Push in that heel. Get the heel, right? Again, that big ball pad of the foot, big toe. All right, and now I've got a bunch of little toes. Let's use some cool drawing tricks. Again, similar to these ones, right? Similar sort of drawing trick. You got to draw 4 things, 4 fingers. Let's divide the smart way, right? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. Again, let's make this a bit blockier. And I think I'm going to move this whole thing up just so I don't have that being like this really awkward little tangent. But I think from memory, and what I sort of wanted to do was, again, give him a little bit of like an animalistic sort of toe, right? I.e. a claw. Let's put that in. Bang, bang. Again, we're looking down at this foot quite a bit, so we're probably going to see that. Going to see that sort of toe a little bit there. But yeah, he doesn't have anything around. No, sort of like nothing on his feet. But he will have some armor up here. So, again, good idea. That is kind of tricky here. Whenever you're drawing digitally kind of sucks. You can't see the whole page, you know, see I'm sort of looking at toes, I can't look up and see that, so always good to window, arrange, new window for this sort of file. All right, so that gives me a new window here. All right, and I'm just going to drag it up because I got another monitor up there. And bam, now I can see it. Oh, I don't want to search. So yeah, you don't need a great monitor. It can be super, super cheap, super, super small. You know, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be anything, really. But just something so you can see it. It used to be quite tricky to do that, you know. Now it's so easy to get a cheap monitor. Again, that's assuming you're on a desktop, right? If you're doing this on Procreate or, you know, something else, I don't know what you're going to do. Cool. I'll open up that other file just so you can see where I'm sort of going with this. So this is the guy. I'm kind of draw like one of these characters, something like this. Again, just for fun, just to sort of stretch my ability. Practice, sit down, do some drawing. Yeah, so again, got the big sort of massing in the ball. And by massing in, I just mean I'm kind of like quickly just sort of drawing big sort of chunky lumps of stuff, right? And trying to kind of feel the mass, right? Feel that solidarity. So again, let's, you can see I've made a few marks here that are very faint, all right? But I'll sort of indicate them there so you can see what I'm doing. There's a couple of marks there that are really, really important, all right? This is giving me the indication of the side of the head, right? This is giving me center of head, right? And this is giving me the sort of where the eyes are. So you can see I kind of put it in, right, as a couple of sketch marks, but in my mind, they're solid. And that is going to allow me to, again, I can sort of find side of the head there. All right, let's add a little bit of mass to the back. He's going to have long hair, but what I want to do is find that sort of brow, because he has, yeah, non-sort of human anatomy, right? And we'll see how well I do at sort of replicating that. But yeah, he's sort of got this very small sort of forehead and this big kind of nose and these like tiny little eyes. So again, I've got to try and find some of that anatomy. So I'm just going to mark in that nose, right, where I think that nose is going to be. And again, we're kind of looking up. So I'm going to try and block in a little bit three-dimensionally where that nose sort of might be. Right, and he's kind of got this lion, big cat style sort of lip. Bam, bam. And quite broad cheeks. So again, let's rotate, flip. Let's make sure, again, if you're drawing on paper, you can just sort of rotate a bit and try and think about lining stuff up, right, a little bit less. You often can have a little bit more luck doing it that way than sort of trying to just draw it straight, because your brain's likely to misinterpret stuff. So again, I feel like I'm just trying to find those marks for those big cheeks. And again, so I can sort of find, again, where would the jaw be? Jaw is going to be somewhere there. Again, sort of in line with the mouth, right? So we're not dealing with any sort of crazy, like alien style anatomy. But yeah, and these cheeks, again, sort of come in. So I'm going to just indicate, again, trying to line up, indicating the those sort of orbital sockets. This guy doesn't have many eyebrows or anything. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what did I do to give him that particular look? Very hard to say. Give it a try anyway. So I think, yeah, I gave him like this weird little sort of hat. So I'm going to indicate that by, again, let's place it. Again, I'm going to rotate because it's easy to get that line with my body. Let's put in an ellipse there. Bam. All right. So simple drawing, simple perspective. Let me check. Yeah, I'm checking the one on the other monitor. It looks all right. Hard to tell from there. Again, just trying to follow some very, very vague rules. So again, he's got like these big kind of nostrils. And kind of, yeah, beard here. So again, I'm imagining kind of his chin is probably going to be like there or something, but he's got this crazy big beard. Alright, that kind of comes down here. Bam, bam, bam. And what I'm going to do is just super lightly indicate some of the dimension of that. Because later on, I'll come and sort of add some texture to it. Okay, there's a few other sort of things, right? We sort of had some sort of little hooks. Now, not sure that's going to end up being a bit of a bad tangent, but we'll see. Again, hair coming here. And he also has some really kind of weird eyes. Ears. Again, let's find that on the other side. Bam. Bam. That's probably still not great. Alright, I sort of tried to find it, but yeah, something like that. Alright, and again, there's this kind of weird little skull cap style helmet with a few horns here. And basically, sort of he's got like a cloak, a sort of fur here. And so I'm sort of thinking, again, imagining where that cloak is going to be, right, as it goes around, sort of drawing through. But you don't have to indicate that harshly. Again, going to go through here, find this, and like all superhero capes and things, right? This just helps give you motion, right? Helps tell that story of motion. You also had looked like something else was kind of indication that, yeah, maybe you had this kind of like longer hair. Again, with sort of hooks or something at the end. Alright. And yeah, so let's find, again, I felt like that sort of fell into place okay, but if we were to kind of think about, okay, that's back of the head, I've got skeleton, all right, I've got sort of a neck is going to sort of be about there. I'm going to find center, all right, if this is kind of my torso, let's find center of that torso, bam, trying to sort of bridge that gap, and then just imagine what's sort of happening at the back. It's going to help me basically just build some structure in there. All right. And again, find center, all right, of the belt, because that will allow me to, again, put in, just roughing in that ellipse. But again, thinking about where that minor axis of that ellipse is in relation to perspective. Again, you can sort of see if it was sort of straight, it would be about here, but I'm imagining it's sort of tilted down a little bit. And again, if we sort of think about where that belt goes around, bam, right, it's kind of a little bit bigger around here and then gets smaller. Now, I should really have drawn that through to make sure that kind of works. All right. Just redrawing that ellipse. I'm trying not. I feel like this got drawn a little bit rough. And a little bit strong. So there is this center, all right, center, and again, this is kind of the, right, if I was again to mark it in sort of solidly, right, this is kind of that torso, right, and that's sort of the side that the arm connects to, but we just got it softly, which is kind of probably better. So center's coming out there. That's going to allow me to, again, so I'm drawing through. That's going to allow me to just raise that a little bit. All right. Again, make sure I'm going right either side of center. Bam, bam, put that down. And I think this is going to need to kick out a little bit. Right, so it's not just dropping down, right, it's coming out as well. So we've basically got this center line that sort of curves here. Right, basically just drawing right, it's like we're sort of drawing a little curved thing there, right? Cool. What else is there? So yeah, he's sort of got these like armored thighs, right? I think it comes up to about there, right? Again, so I'm going to draw through, and I think there was like sort of 1, 2, right? 1, 2 of these sort of armor bits there, bang, bang. Put some little indication of screws or something like that holding it together, and you have this kind of like leather sort of skirt coming over here, right? And then there's a second layer underneath this. This is going to need to come out a little bit. Yeah, second layer. And that again comes up here, and coming around here is another one of these kind of like armored bits of metal. Same thing on this side, but I don't know how much of that we're going to see. And basically underneath all of that. All right, we got another one. And this is supposed to be basically, I'm not sure whether this is actually kind of something there, because again, there's not a lot of sort of mass to show the overlap, but luckily we're just drawing this. I don't have to create it in 3D or anything. Then we'd have to worry more about, like, how thick is this? In this case, it's just kind of another layer going over the top of that. Yeah, cool. It's going to straighten that up a little bit more. Again, some indication of structure. Cool. Maybe some little, again, this is one of those sort of things I always do because it just helps give a little bit of sort of depth going around that figure. Put in a little pouch or something like that. Maybe a few other things behind attached to that belt. Cool. All right. So time to double check. Let's go back. Does this actually make sense? Look up at the other screen. Yeah. I feel like the previous drawing I did, he was like way chunkier up top. So again, I've got some sort of deltoids here. Through muscles of the deltoid, right? And let's see, again, here we got the bottom of the chin, and he's tilted forward. We're going to have that kind of clavicle sort of somewhere there. Again, somewhere there. And this arm is sort of coming down. Let's block it in using sort of a cylinder. Again, you can kind of think of that sort of forearm muscle as a big sort of oval cylinder as well. Little cylinder for the wrist. Now, not exactly sure which way, because I sort of just drew this as a silhouette. Not sure where we're going with it. Bang. Bang. And I got to remember this has got a cool bit of armor on it. So I'm going to draw this, but let's not go crazy with it. So bicep, tricep, deltoid, deltoid. All right. Now you could do this on a separate layer, right, if you wanted. If you get sort of antsy about this kind of stuff. Right, just sort of make a separate layer. And that way you can kind of draw through more. Right, and even. Right, you know, worry way less. So there's a couple of things here. Again, I can draw through with confidence, knowing that, you know, I don't have to go back. I can kind of, you know, I kind of raise over this, and I'm not gonna delete anything under here. Right, bam. When I get that, that's kind of like, ah, yeah, cool, that works. Let's add dimension to that. And again, I had a few really simple patterns on it. Now, how does that attach to anything? I've got no idea, right? We're not doing that. This is not that type of drawing. Again, don't have to make it in 3D. No modeler's gonna come and bug me about this. You're like, what the hell's going on there? Yeah. So again, I kind of hid what was happening. Speaking of being cheeky, I kind of hid what was going on there before when I did the last drawing, so I don't have a solid plan for what was happening with this. So again, still doing this as a rough, right? Like some of these lines will sort of make it, some of them sort of won't. Bam. Make sure we save. See, the idea is all these are kind of going, they'd sort of be tucking in behind. All right, and this is going to go around the neck, sort of there, which is again good. Good we put in that neck there. And again, how these big sort of, I guess that's kind of like they're kind of pigtails, aren't they? I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. I don't know how they get from kind of his head. But maybe we should sort of put something there. All right. So the sketch I did was pretty good. I feel like in terms of proportion, like I feel like there wasn't anything where I was looking at it and going, that doesn't mean that, you know, if I needed to correct something, right, I would certainly sort of do it. So I'm still drawing on this layer, which is sort of good. Because again, I'm going to mass in this hand. I'm thinking about, again, where that kind of main sort of top of the hand is. And then where that kind of line of where the thumb is going to be. And that's going to come around. Now, he's got this kind of cool sword. And this kind of stuff is a lot easier to do. So I did that on a second layer as well, just so I can kind of make it fit where the hand was. Yeah, making these sorts of lines is a lot easier on paper. This original drawing for the original sketch for this was done on paper. And the idea is this kind of thing is just one big chunky sort of hunk of metal. And once we sort of get to around here, so he would kind of have the center of it. Got each side. And at some point, again, I'm going to draw sort of perpendicular to this line, right? So at right angles, got a line here. And I can kind of, again, just construct this out. Make sure I'm not going too wide. Again, how far? Don't know. Easy way to do this would just be flip it, right? So we just, you know, it's basically square. You know, you could just kind of turn around like that and be like, oh yeah, there we go. And Photoshop's pretty good, you know, at doing that sort of stuff. I really recommend sort of handling it that way most of the time. It's sort of so bad at figuring out. It's so bad because you just can't see stuff in Photoshop. You can't see the whole drawing that easily. So yeah, even on a Cintiq, this is on a Cintiq, even on a Cintiq, that stuff's quite tricky. Just seems to be a lot easier to make some of those kind of lines. And it also had some sort of cool little barbs. So again, what this weapon is, I have no idea. No idea at all. Now, from a perspective point of view, we're looking down at this sort of sword here, so we should either sort of add some dimension, or we should sort of carve out a little bit of dimension there, just so we remember we're seeing the top of this guy. And again, let's draw that ellipse a bit better. Again, just looking at, like, you know, again, those lines, making it line up with the scene. That doesn't fully line up with this, but it's all right. Other thing is, you know, sort of once you're done with that, you know, we could sort of do a warp. So edit, transform, warp, and I could kind of just push this a little bit. All right, so it just feels a little bit more sort of perspectived and distorted. Again, sometimes it's like, well, yeah, we did it with structure to begin with. Just want to add a little bit of sort of distortion to it because it feels like it, you know, it's going to be sort of coming at the camera a little bit. So here again, I've got the armor here, and this is where, yeah, I can kind of like go in there and delete, like erase some of that because I know I don't sort of need it. And yeah, you had some sort of armor there. Now again, this is just, we're still at sketch phase. Bam. Put in, and actually I think this thing came down a lot more, right? Sort of covers most of the palm. And then we've got some interesting breakup that probably wasn't that well thought out, but let's go with it. Again, should be drawing these through, but I think I'm more interested in just the overall shapes and stuff. So again, let's do the other arm, figure out what's going on there. So I think, yeah, having it sort of going back. Oh, maybe. Yeah, so I'm just gonna merge that down. Actually, let's erase this out first because that might be a bit of a pain. All right, there we go. So yeah, the question is, like, with this arm, right? Is it sort of going away from us or is it sort of coming at us? Right? Is it sort of put in the kind of thumb? I think this guy as well had like these really sort of chunky paw-like hands. So that might be something also worth playing around with. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I think that's sort of what I want. And yeah, I don't know whether the other has the same thing. So again, roughing that in. Now that arm might be getting a bit long. So I'm going to do some cheaty Photoshop selecting. Let's move that back a bit. I think we can also, all right, probably move that up a bit. And again, if you sort of think about where that elbow is and where that elbow is. Again, it's all about proportion. Now, I haven't even put in the pectorals yet because, again, I feel like that will sort of connect up pretty easily. But yeah, that's really the next step. So let's find center. All right, again, find, I feel like I'm going to need to be a little bit sort of smaller than that. And so yeah, again, I could sort of construct these a little bit more, but I feel like I've sort of drawn that sort of thing enough that I can kind of wing it. So I'm just gonna go with that. Yeah, so let's hide that sketch because I don't really need that anymore. Right, I'm sort of done with that. The question is, could I? Yeah, I feel like that feels a bit more like the sketch, right? You've got that sort of slightly elongated neck. And that also, again, gives us a little bit more room for this, again, to just sort of see those pectorals up there, right? It makes his chest feel sort of broader, right? Other thing you could try and do, again, just doing Photoshop trickery. Let's kind of select this arm and see if we kind of just move it out a little bit. Yeah, that's going to give him just more sort of breadth, right? And these are things that, yeah, you know, like you can try and get them right the first time, but, you know, I think those proportional things are easier to see when you're doing it traditionally, right? So, yeah, I don't get sort of caught up in the whole, like, oh, you know, I should sort of try and not sort of move stuff around like that. I feel like often, yeah, Photoshop is just not good at that stuff. So when it's proportional, I normally just sort of try and go with the digital flow. When it's when it's kind of something else, though, I will try and erase it and start again. It's because I think it sort of trains your brain to sort of do it right the first time, right? A little bit more. You don't want to sort of end up just constantly being there for ages, tweaking stuff around, you know, transforming everything. All right, move that a little bit. Yeah, let's merge that. Do we need that anymore? Maybe. It does help. It does help having just even that little faint thing, right? Just always keeps me remembering what's going on. All right, so what do we do now? So again, there's from this point, there would be many, many ways to finish this drawing, right? Depending on how much sort of sketchiness we wanted to put in. But the way I sort of think of it is that kind of I go through and I'm going to manually kind of erase, right? So I'm not going to reduce opacity. I'm going to manually erase, and where stuff is kind of sketchy and I can see that like it needs redrawing, right, with the hand, where I've got like, you know, a lot of sort of mess, right? I'm going to go through and again I'm going to sort of try and erase out. And this makes very much a traditional process, right? So I'm just going to go through by hand, right? Let's kind of delete a few of these sketch lines. All right, but what we'll find is, you know, in general, right, they're going to give me some energy, right? So I don't need to get rid of all of them because this is a sketch, you know, it's not an illustration or anything. But yeah, any of this stuff, right, let's sort of try and get rid of that. And I'll get rid of it here. And basically I'm just going to do another drawing over the top. But keep it as one. So again, I can redraw this stuff here, but I'm just kind of making sure that yeah, and for instance, like I know I should redraw this stuff. That needs redrawing, that needs redrawing. Let's get rid of that sketch mark, that. All right, so that's kind of what I'll do. And now I'm going to increase the opacity of this one a little bit. All right, maybe to 50. And let's try and do some proper drawing. So I'm just duplicating those lines again. That way, you know, if I really want to go back, you know, I can go back. But while I'm in my process, right, while I'm sort of here, I'm not going to be tempted to go back. So again, I need to find center for this nose. Bam, bam. And yeah, so I'm just drawing, and I'm going to use the pencil, right, a little bit. So by that I mean, you know, I'm not going to fully create a clean line drawing. You know, I'm not going for cleanliness. I'm going to, you know, use a little bit of sort of sketching and sort of thing. And here, yeah, I'm going to erase out stuff behind that ear. Bam. We don't need quite such a dark marker there. All right. So yeah, these kind of lines kind of lead down here. So again, lots of suggestion, right? Lots of sort of, you know, using these lines for kind of texture. And again, using the sketchiness for texture. So this is exactly the same sort of way I'd do it if I was doing it on pencil and paper. Give this guy a little bit of dimension. So again, important to get the right level of zoom for this, because it's super easy to sort of get very like caught up in detail, and I don't need to. Just going to add again abstract indications of him having a beard. And as I said, yeah, I want to kind of indicate the dimensionality of it. What else? Again, try and add a little bit of dimension to these lips. And again, a lot of this will be clarified when we add color, right? Again, sort of little hook things or something like that. Not sure what they are. And if you're ever not unsure, like sort of where to start or what to do, if you're kind of, you know, going through a drawing that you're sort of finishing up, start with the stuff in front first, right? Super obvious, because that way, you know, if I kind of draw this line here, then it's a lot easier for me to draw, right, the other lines that are kind of around it. Now again, I'm going to abstractly indicate the right, the sort of plait going on here. If we've got more time, right, I can easily go in there and, plus that, but I don't think we will. And I'm going to put in, again, another stylistic affectation that I often sort of do is I'm kind of drawing in sort of quite harshly the idea of some sort of cast shadows. Again, whoa, yeah, getting weird. Photoshop Wacom issues. Again, got some sort of hair in the background going on with that sort of long, again, sort of plaits. A warrior's braid. Or is it just kind of pigtails? I don't know. And again, at some point, it's like, we got to move or we're not going to get this thing done, right? It's like sometimes, we work on the face. I feel like once we sort of got those key things sort of sorted, and I'm kind of like, I feel like that is going to work. So again, trying to adding a little bit more sort of detail. I don't think a lot of this made it into the other sort of drawing that I did. We'll see how it turns out. Again, so often if you're designing characters, you've kind of just got to do it a few times to really figure out, like, oh, that's what made it look like that, not this other thing. So anyway, I feel like that's sort of sufficient, right, for that. So let's just try and do some of these other things pretty quickly, which again may or may not be possible if you're sort of following along and trying to do the same kind of thing. You can really only do it quickly if you've done it slowly before. Just punching up these lines. Although, again, they were kind of pretty accurate to begin with. But yeah, I'm just going to add, again, a bit more indication of sort of shadow. Just push those points where I'm finding things kind of joining, right? Where I would kind of have some sort of ambient occlusion or whatever. Now, I feel like, yeah, this ear just has never been sort of right. I don't know whether... Don't know whether that's going to help. Yeah, I feel like that helps. All right, put in pictorial. The original guy had these really sort of perfect, like Arnold Schwarzenegger from the first Conan movie pectorals. And also he has a bit of this kind of hair. Bam, bam. Let's make this. I think I had a little circle or something like that under here when I was doing that sketch. That's sort of gotten lost. Let's see if we can kind of put this in. Again, putting in some of that indication there. See if I can add it over here, kind of cheat a bit. Again, I can probably plus this line, right? Because it's really, as in like make it darker, right? Because it's really sort of going in front of all those others. again, you might see some of that sort of deltoid, but again, let's not make it too, just gonna soften that. Let's see if we can erase that. So again, it's gonna push the idea of this being sort of a braid or something, but very roughly. But a lot of these things, yeah, you know, like what you sort of find is that, you know, you just do these things a lot of time and you kind of figure out what you need to do to sort of sell that idea, right? Let's push the dimensionality of these. Oh man, I'm getting heaps of sort of full pressure accidental Wacom stuff happening. It's very annoying. Where I'm putting down a soft line and it's just spitting out full pressure. So again, if we've sort of done our job, right, like a lot of these lines really aren't going to matter as much. Oh, again, I'm just going to put a little bit more dimension. Whoa, a little bit more dimensionality on that sort of bicep. Oh, again. So again, as well, we've sort of got, let me put in this first. Bang. Bang. Before I forget. Yeah. So you've got these chest muscles, right? And he is going to have, again, sort of those like side muscles coming around there. Right. But again, I'm not putting, you can see I'm not putting in heaps of, you know, technical hardcore anatomy. I feel like that's a bit sort of strong, right? But he did have, all right, some quite sort of defined anatomy there. Again, putting in, when I did the other sketch, again, putting in sort of cast shadow idea here. Whoa. What you do in Photoshop? Cast shadow there. Don't know what. Probably, again, I'm not going to go too far, right, and add it sort of there. It's sort of just where we'd see actual sort of cast shadow. I find, again, just sort of thinking about that, like that's just one of those stylistic affectations, right? It's just one of those things I'm kind of doing. I find it kind of helps me think about it as I'm drawing it. I find it kind of works, but it is abstract, right? Come on, Photoshop. All right. Put in that ellipse, give it some dimension. Okay, it's got this kind of thing above and below. Actually, I think it's bigger. I like that ellipse, so I was like, oh, that's a good one. Again, just delete it. You can draw it again. If you've drawn it once, you should be able to draw it again, right? All right. Come on, Photoshop, you can do it. Okay, under here, going in there, under here, going in there. Again, I should have drawn through. Don't know how all this is going to turn out. Might be a bit. Let's give it a little bit of, again, a little bit of curve, a little bit of character. Right. Try and think about some of the dimension that might be sort of going on there. And then again, let's draw through, try and trace that even at this stage, again, I really want to make sure drawing through, it's just a sketch. And if I wanted to take this to the next stage, right, I'd probably just do a pass like this, but I'd do it rougher. So I'd sort of be defining a lot of this secondary form that I'm doing here. But, yeah, I'd be doing it without fussing over the lines so much, and then I'd do a really clean line pass at the end. That's probably sort of how it would sort of break down. Again, got Deltoid. So yeah, don't know what's going on there. That probably wasn't great. I guess. I think this deltoid needs to come down more. Got bicep. So again, why did I sort of jump over here? I don't know. Right, I was sort of doing this. Shadow, shadow, shadow. Putting in, oh yeah, got to put that in. Again. I don't think that's going to sell it. I don't think that's good enough. But at the same time, I think part of my hesitation there is like, I don't think you're going to see it. It's not great. Draw through. You know what? I'm just going to try and sort of ignore it. It's one of those things where, like, you know, there's often these little bits and pieces like that. Real low diminishing returns, right? On sort of, you know, really going in there and sorting it out. So again, we've got these kind of like semi gauntlets. Okay, this thing kind of coming down. Probably something that could do with significant redesign. Again, got indication of some mechanical sort of thing there, right? Again, bifurcation, so we've got different plates of armor. Again, important to kind of try and make it pop with the silhouette, right? That'll kind of help a lot. Again, indicate, you know, areas where we're going to find sort of, you know, some sort of ambient occlusion or little kind of pools of light. And really, I'm putting most of my, rendering energy there. Yeah, here we go. Need a little bam, bam. Ah, that's good enough. Okay. Give them chunky knuckles. Same thing here. Again, remember, I don't want to try to draw this too straight. And again, let's divide that up, right? Go in half, in half, in half. So I got sort of some idea of fingers. Right, again, I've got sort of knuckle, finger, finger. This one is maybe a little bit bigger. And here, again, I'm going to sort of have sort of running out of space. But that's all right. I mean, we visually aren't going to see those back ones that much, but if you don't sort of divide it up in four like that, you know, and then you've got your fingers, it's super easy. What normally happens is you kind of draw one finger right, and another finger, and then you're like, oh, you kind of get like some fingers that don't proportionally line up. So are we going to see the claws and stuff like that? Probably not. So again, I'm going to wing a little bit of detail here. So yeah, a big part of practicing your drawing is just making sure that you you just figure out what you need to put in, right? Like I've sort of done enough of these kind of things. I just have to kind of make sure I'm seeing the right sort of side of it, right? I've done enough of these that I can sort of especially when I'm doing a sketch, right? I can kind of make this up. Let's make this one go this way. Right, this one go this way. This way. And let's do one more for good luck. Right, that's a little bit sort of separated. Okay, so bam, I've got a line here. Got a line here to again show that dimension. And I could probably have shown a bit more of that dimension on those wraps there. Again. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Photoshop Wacom Windows Land. Everyone says it's someone else's fault all the time with those guys. Just figure it out. All right. So you can see again, like this is going to be a sketchy drawing, right? It's going to be a whole bunch of these construction lines under there. Again, I think that's fine. I don't think. Again, let's just try and make these line up. I don't think that's going to matter for what I'm doing with it here. It's got this kind of center of the blade thing. Again, that's a bit sketchy. The idea is that, again, whoa, this bit is kind of sharpened. All right. So again, other sort of stylistic affectations there. Whoa, yeah, sort of just showing that actually. That really should be a little bit cleaner. Whoa. Come on. Cool. All right. So yeah, you can see again. Let's try to give this little finger here a little bit more dimension. Super easy to get stuck in hand purgatory. Just end up redrawing some stupid hand that no one sees or cares about when you're doing this stuff. Yeah, I feel like that bicep's just not big enough compared to this one. This one's like really, really popping. But again, the dimensionality, often if you're looking at the bicep from the front, right, it can be quite sort of thin, right, compared to, you can kind of be looking at a bicep from the front, that is like quite sort of chunky. Right, so you look at it from the front. Yeah, so you never know. I feel like what I should do is try and make it sort of tuck in a little bit more. All right, so again, it's sort of tucking in underneath deltoid, pectoral, bicep. All right, so we got again pectoral, deltoid. All right, pectoral. Gonna make it really tuck in there. And again, I'm going to sort of draw another one of those sort of gauntlets on it. So I'm going to find that dimension, chop that out a bit. The other thing this computer does is it often switches to eraser halfway through. It switches to pencil halfway through eraser. So I'm gonna start with that again, massing in those sort of forms of the thumb and stuff like that. And again, I'm not aiming for some crazy illustration level. All right, just putting that in there. Bam. Again, I'm going to emphasize knuckles. This might be something you need to construct a little bit more. That looks a bit big. Also, it looks a bit not quite how I want them to look. So again, I'm going to have this one sort of again drawing through this finger coming this way. Right, this finger. So again, I feel like that will probably read okay from a silhouette point of view. And now we're going to have this big chunky thing here. We're going to have this thing here. This is all on a far side hand that people are only going to see if I draw attention to it by messing it up. Let's draw these in. So again, I'm imagining a lot of this form here. I'm not doing a lot of construction. Sort of winging it, looking up. I don't know whether this is going to sell it, hey. I feel like, again, just finding out more about that form, right, as I'm sort of drawing it. Let's go crazy with this tricep. Yeah, that's probably how big it needs to be. It's looking a bit weird. So, yeah, it can be a danger if you're kind of redrawing and sort of altering the angles and stuff like that, doing a lot of that kind of work. Because, you sort of like what works from one angle won't work from another angle. So it's really a good idea not to, like this probably, you see how that was a sketchy thing to begin with. So that probably was, I would mark that off as like too sketchy because it's taken up too much time compared to sort of what it is, right? So again, I'm just going to leave that. I'll come back to it. It's not working. I think the hand is kind of okay, but let's make it a tiny bit smaller. And it is possible I just kind of made this thing, right, just a little bit too a little bit too short. It could be there's just a bit too much anatomy there. So yeah, because this is really meant to be sort of coming at us. And if that's coming at us, right, so if that's kind of coming at us, I feel like that sort of feels okay. And this one probably is gonna, right, and that might just be that that is kind of more squished together. Right, so the idea is, again, like, you know, his arm is kind of bent, but maybe this one's more bent than this one. Anyway. I think that passes. I think that's okay. Let's add some other stuff to it so that hopefully, see what happens. At the moment it's like having a little bit more prominence because this stuff is not finished. Let's add this. So again, just adding those dimensional marks. Bam, bam. What? Bam. Got some quads. All right. So I basically just got to draw those legs. So yeah, let's try and just smash those out. Again, gonna break these lines a little bit going around. We did draw through. I feel like those are kind of okay, but yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not sort of, again, not like hanging on these too much, right? Because the angle is a little bit weird. And again, where we're getting joint, right, I'm just going to push a few little marks. And the reason I'm able to do this is because, bang, bang, it's because I'm using that lower opacity, right? So I can keep going over and over and over the line, and it's going to make it darker and darker, which is kind of how pencil works, right? And I think he had some, I think again in the original sketch. See, I've got that big chunky thing there. Stupid big line that shouldn't be there. Yeah, he sort of had something hanging down the back. Right. Can again add dimension there. That's right, he kind of had this thing. He had that kind of skirt on over here. Totally forgot about that. Like that, like that. And then cast shadow. Cast shadow. Again, make that even darker. Yeah. Okay, let's push a little bit of shadow there as well. Just really give that some dimension. All right, just, again, these legs are not a major part of this. Let's just put some legs in there. Rough that in. Again, doing some like subtle, giving some sort of subtle dimension, right? Just working those kind of lines a little bit, but still in that sketchy way. Oh man, stop doing that. Does it again. And normally I'd stop and maybe do a restart, see why. Maybe update Wacom drivers. I might not have done that for a while, but yeah, just because I'm sort of in the middle of recording this, I'm not gonna fuss around with that. Alright, there we go. That's pretty much done. So a couple of other things I'm going to do is just put in some, again, if Photoshop lets me put in some sort of, again, abstract marks to kind of help with the shading. Because this cloak here is going to be kind of in shadow. So again, these are like super, like dumb marks, but that stuff will help. And again, it's sort of, because they're a little bit sort of sketchy and weird like that, they're not going to get mistaken for other marks, right? There's something about like the abstractness of these marks, this sort of thing I found that really kind of like, where they're quite loose, where it does make it very clear that, this is something different, right? It's the same as the car shadows, right? You could sort of, sit there and put them in flat. You could kind of try and sort of make them, go with the flow. But, like there's no right or wrong, but for me, I like to kind of, again, do the sort of squiggle in there because it makes it very clear that like that is not. Again, probably we're going to get a car shadow or something in there. I don't know whether that's going to help me though. Yeah. Yeah, it makes it very clear that that is a, like something different, whereas if we were kind of, shading with everything, then everything's going to feel like it sort of has more, like you're going to kind of have to do that everywhere. And the other thing is that, I find if you just kind of put some flat color in there to kind of darken it up, it works really well. Because car shadows often have quite a harsh, they have a defined line, right? So it's different to kind of, just being like, I'm just going to keep adding shadow. That's going to feel more like a form shadow, right? So I'm just going through, plussing this a little bit. I should probably flip it, but I don't think I'm going to like what I see. It's not too bad. But yeah, I feel like this thing probably was first. It was right that first time I did it, hey? So this is one of those things where, like half the time I do find that, I sort of flip it and then and I'm like, oh, this is obviously wrong. And then you kind of flip it back and it looks wrong the other way as well. Just trying to straighten out some of these things. So I feel like that might be off center just a tiny bit. We could maybe move it over there. So I'm just going through, again, doing a flip will help you with a lot of these kind of like subtle things. You just kind of notice little bits and pieces. All right, bang, bang. Got this going. I think, again, the original sketch had a bit more. All right, that wasn't quite as graphic. Yeah. Is that better? I don't know. Cool. But yeah, so it's a little bit wobbly, right? Few things that I sort of see that just kind of could be a little bit cleaner. But again, I think also a lot of them probably not much you could do. So one of the things that this guy did have in the original was sort of again this kind of clean brow. Oh, come on, Photoshop, stop doing that. So just and it's just that sort of a bit of that sort of Neanderthal brow, right? That sort of wider look. All right, let's flip back and see whether that looks worse or not. It's all right. Okay, enough talking. Let's do some color, hey? Okay. So I'm just going to grab all these other things. I'm going to grab all these things that I didn't really use, don't really need anymore. And I'm going to make some levels. And the levels are there to get rid of, I really want to get rid of all of those little sketchy lines, because I'm going to use these lines to help me get a series of flats. I can use pencil tool. Pencil tool. Just fill all these guys up. So they're pretty simple, right? Just gonna look for anything where I've got like little bits of sort of sketchiness that might come back to bite, but again, it's meant to be sketchy. All right. Gonna punch in action. It's gonna do some magic. Get rid of those. And what I might do is just use those colors that I've already got. Right? Sort of show you how how we can be a little bit more efficient with the with that sort of stuff. So you can see this was done quite a while ago, 2017. All right. So let's get rid of that. And we'll get, again, still a pencil. This will help us with, no, I don't want that. I want it here. I feel like that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of where we are. Now, there's this sort of shadow of this thing. And again, this guy's going to have a bit of a crazy shadow with that cape. And it's super important to keep this stuff loose if it's loose, right? If we want it to be loose, we need to make sure it stays loose. All right, let's get rid of all of this stuff and see what the flat colors are like. I'm going to start with that skin tone. Now there's a couple of things we can do here, right? Like I can make these lines darker if I need. Right? Can make them slightly darker. And that'll kind of help with some of that punch. And I find it is often a lot easier to kind of start. I think it's probably a similar thing here where I'm going to do this flatting with something a lot rougher. This just is going to give me more of a painterly look, right? Putting in that cape color. All right, let's put in that sort of fur there. Again, we've got the beard. See, it sort of missed a bit. Let's get rid of that. So I've got a sort of very simple color scheme. I've got this sort of metal, which is this kind of blue. All right, gonna put that on here. I think one of the reasons why, yeah, like doing kind of barbarian style, like simple sort of styles of art is really fun. You can sort of get away with just really basic, simple color schemes. I shouldn't have done those yet. I've still got. So you can see I'm being like very rough with this. I think it'll probably be fine. But you can see here again, kind of ended up really making this kind of like darker to give him that kind of lion look, right? And this was probably like a little bit more red still. And here we've got that. Bam. Put that in. rough. It's all good. So, I mean, yeah, one of the real benefits of working with a line and color style is you can obviously for good reason, right? You're often working in sort of comics or something like that with this kind of style, and you need to be able to replicate the look of characters from panel to panel. But if you're sort of creating personal work, right, and you can just sort of utilize those flats, it makes a huge difference. Actually, let me keep that, and I'll use that selection of the remaining skin color to help me block in these. So again, this isn't going to win any awards for coloring in books or anything like that, right? I'm doing very, 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 very rough coloring. So let's basically just put in, I think this stuff probably needs to be brown. So just often, yeah, like slightly different shades of brown is what I'm working with. Again, it gives it that feeling of, it's that sort of fantasy, yeah, kind of fantasy, simple, there's not a lot of complex dyes or, other things. We're not dealing with fancy colors because we don't have them. Right, you need lots of technology to dye stuff in a fancy way. So just sort of natural colors, but we can play with the tonality of it. Put in this. What else? Oh yeah, it seemed like that was a bit of a lighter color for some reason. All right, what are we missing? Yeah, so there's a little bit of this going on as well, where probably just using some sort of lower opacity. So same tool, right? Same thing. Just making those feet a little bit darker. So it feels like, yeah, the character is kind of, yeah, dirty feet, basically. And here again. Again, looking at, abstracting the simple way that, metal and swords kind of look. But yeah, that's it. I feel like that's pretty much it with sort of colors. But there was another pass. I know that there was some sort of subtle work done after this. Play around with that later. Again, that was fine. That's fine. Yeah. All right. That. And yeah, we did have quite a pop on those. Claws. All right, what else we got? Oh, I had these cool things. Forgot about that. That would have helped a bit. And again, he didn't have as much of a cape. Oh well. So yeah, you can see that the next stage would be a just adding a sort of a rendering pass, right? And then sort of roughing that out. So I think for that brush, I've got like sort of this thing. But let's just check. That's a hard light. I can actually go through and just select that color. All right, and let's make a new hard light. And see if we can replicate that look. So I've just got a brush, sort of a textural brush. I think it's like a very similar brush to the sort of brushy pencil brush that I had before. Let's get rid of that. Whoop. And I'm just painting hard light with kind of a dark red with like 40% opacity. And that again means I can kind of keep going over. Right, I can keep pushing it if I want. And this is one of those sort of techniques that I really think will help a lot of people who come a bit more from a drawing background. Again, I'm going down in opacity so I can get some sort of subtler effects. Going to 30. Again, indicating based on understanding of what metal's likely to do. So here I'm going to put in some of that sort of shading I was sort of thinking about. Hopefully I can make sense of this anatomical nonsense. Looking at the other screen, just sort of double checking stuff. I think I'll do there will be one more pass. Let's get, again, so we had the cast shadow underneath the pectoral. Let's put in a form shadow. Let's push core shadow on these kind of metallic surfaces. Let's get a bit of, again, form shadow on these things in the back here. Yeah, very tricky to do this stuff quickly if you don't know what you're doing. And again, not to say I know exactly what I'm doing, but I know enough that I sort of know what I can get away with. I have a rough understanding of the form I'm trying to create. Again, just being subtle, pushing some of those forms in the face a little bit. And yeah, so I think I stopped halfway through what I was saying. This technique is really good for people who are drawers, right? Because what I'm sort of doing is kind of like adding shadow progressively, right? Like little bit by little bit by little bit. And it kind of really mimics, again, what you sort of do when you're drawing, right? So I'm sort of, I can kind of put in roughly where the shadows would go, you know what I mean? And then I can kind of, if I want, I can go in and push those core shadows a bit more. All right, smooth things out, do whatever I want, right? It's kind of like you sort of ease up on it, as opposed to, trying to be super, super kind of clean with it. So these fingers back here. Right, adding a bit of, they're going to be in shadow, shadow, shadow. Again, just doing a rough indication of metal. Let's find it. Push that core shadow there. Again, that's all going to get sort of darker in there. Find some of that pictorial dimension. Again, make sure we separate that chest cavity. Yeah, it's looking all right. Okay, and again, what's happening with these legs? So here's another thing you can do with this kind of process. So I'm not quite sure how far I want to push this sort of shading. So I'm going to sort of shade it like just generally, like I'm just going to sort of give it some dimension. So not really thinking about where the light's going to come from or anything like that. All right, just kind of shading. All right, shading. All right, so I'm just kind of adding dimension. And then what I'm going to do over that is kind of, because again, we're sort of building up, right? I've got like a 30% there. Right, I can kind of hit this again, get maybe with a 20, so hit 2. And I'm just going to sort of shade in this whole, not the foot, right? Because again, the foot is going to be receiving light, but just this bit, all right? So again, and I can kind of like push this back a little bit, right? Push this back, just be very subtle with it, right? So again, building with low opacity, similar to what you do if you're drawing. I'm going to go up in opacity a little bit, hit 40, right? And see if I can push some shadows just under here to separate like this thing from this thing. Let's see if I can separate that. What else could we do? Yeah, let's push this finger back and this finger. So you can see again, like some of that stuff is, with some of those lines was super sketchy, but I can actually go through and, have another go at some of them if I want, right? Like you can fix it in post, all right? Not sure what stuff I did to this. I'm just going to add a little bit of something to it, right? Again, same thing here. If you look at the marks I'm making, they're very sketchy. Right under here, we're in shadow. Not sure about this, right? Basically, most of this should be in shadow. So maybe I should do that a little bit cleaner. Again. This is where it's like, are we actually putting in shadows or are we just kind of messing around? So I'm just going to kind of, again, be a little bit more suggestive with it. I'm going to go to 60. Get like an actual darker kind of color. because I can see some of those sort of cast shadow indications I put in. Right, need to be pushed a little bit sort of further. All right, that's probably enough. Let's see if I can get a bit more dimension here. And whether or not it'll help, right? We can always get more dimension, but like, is it actually going to make things look better? Oh yeah, maybe. All right, so again, previously as well, right, there was a big again, big sort of lump of texture. Right, if you sort of like see kind of what was happening there. So it's basically just sort of very simple texture brush. All right, I'm going to sort of go over with a darker color to sort of give it some texture. Going to erase that out a bit. Right, I'm also going to hit it with a lighter color, right? But I'm going to try and, as much as possible, actually, let's just make this full screen, make sure I can see what I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to sort of try and hit those sort of elements that are a little bit further away first, right? So yeah, that might be, I don't know, that might be a bit much. Then what did we do here? Yeah, so just sort of put overlay, overlay. With what? Same red, same dark red. Sounds good. Select an airbrush. Yeah, cool, that looks good. But again, not that strong. Yeah, and I think again, there's kind of a bit of sort of just fading everything out, right? So it's like just a little bit less harsh. So doing these kind of things just really helps to make it feel as if there's ambient light in the scene, basically. That's sort of what's happening. So that's kind of where we've got lines. Yeah, cool. So let's pump these lines a bit. I feel like we could push them a bit. So there is a bit of sort of texture above everything. And then we've got a few things. So this is another thing you can do, right? I mean, we can literally take the same sort of things here, right? We've got this selective color and This is just sort of affecting the background sort of look. We've got this one, which is kind of affecting all the blues a bit. So this is the kind of thing I did a lot on comics, right? You'd sort of go through and you'd have like a couple of these really cool. See, that really changes the effect, right? Although I think we've sort of forgotten a step here. All right, what we'll do, right, because we've got so I think I need to add a step where we put in a few highlights. So I've got my shadows. I'm actually going to do this on another layer. I'm going to select like a very low opacity. And I've got a cool color here. I'm going to go up to 30%. Yeah, got a cool color here. Because essentially I just want to play around with the idea of sort of keeping the colors in the shadows and the colors in the highlights separate in terms of temperature. So I've still got a hard light. So I can put in some shadows as well if I want. All right, I'm just going to try and push a little bit of dimension there. You can see if I really push that opacity up, I can start to put in some sort of highlights and things. Get those highlights. Just be super subtle. And again, you can like build things up quite a bit this way, right? You can really, if you want, you can really go pretty far. And again, if you kind of hit it a few times, right, you can get that kind of shininess. So yeah, you can kind of build up, you know, like all these bits if you want. I think really what I'm going to do is just help some of these kind of metallic surfaces to read a little bit better. Right, because that is one of those things where, you know, that can feel very flat. Bam. Does that make sense? Not really. Looks kind of cool though. Let's be subtle with that. So again, this might be the idea that, again, this thing has a little bit of dimensionality to it. So again, I can sort of scumble a bit here, add a little bit of sort of texture, right? I can go back over with the darker color again, you know, if I want to sort of play around with some texture there. So you can take this really far if you want. Again, as I keep saying, I'm only at sketch phase with this, so I don't really care that much about, you know, adding too much detail. I'm not really wanting to do that. But, you know, again, you know, if I want to sort of draw attention somewhere, you know, if I feel like I just need to kind of push the focus somewhere, we can do that. But again, I often find like flat works. Flat works better. But again, you could go through, do sort of texture on everything. Something that is kind of quite useful if I sort of go to a lighter color, right? If I pick out a few of these kind of highlights with a slightly, again, got to go sort of hot on these to make it feel shiny, because the iconography of reflectivity is kind of high contrast. Bang, 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 bang. Just picking out a few highlights, right, for like proper sort of brightness. Again, just there, get in between all these. This stuff will help give, you know, what was, again, a pretty sort of sketchy drawing, right? Can really help give it a lot of dimension. Be surprised. Also, you know, if you need to make anything shiny, right, if you wanted the nose to be shiny, which I don't, you could do that. Right, if you wanted the lips to be shiny, right, kind of add some of that. Totally up to you. Again, here. Be very subtle with these leather bits, but still adding a bit of dimension there will kind of help. But I might merge that, because again, all this stuff is really meant to be in shadow. Let's just try to pick out some of those edges. There we go. Could also try and get some shines on there. Anyway, that's probably enough fussing around with that, because again, there is a limit, right? If we do too much, if we keep going, we sort of push it into another realm, right? There is a point at which it will start to feel like a you know, an unfinished illustration as opposed to like a nicely finished sketch, right? Get rid of that. I'm going to turn that up. I think that looks a little bit better. Yeah, anyway, that's all right. So we got this, and we got this, but let's do that again. Select color range. All right, that's going to look better. What are we selecting here? Yeah, the full-on darks. So and that's gonna make them a lot more red. Bang. So there you go. Gives it a lot more punch. Bring it a bit closer to this one. I think that's done. So again, it's done when we put our signature on it. So let's drag this. Looks like that is in one of these. Also, I've got some green that I feel like always helps make it feel a little bit more organic. Might drag this over. Oh yeah, they're in there. Cool. Done. Unless it might look better over the other side. You never know. That might be better. Like the other one was. I think that does look a bit better. It's a bit busy over there. You can see, yeah, that one's got a lot of that. So again, at this point, again, I feel like these grades are working pretty well, right? And you can go through, play around with it, add some stuff, remove some stuff. Right? Does this look better here? Does that look better there? Is this working? Is that working? Right? Yeah. I think that looks pretty cool. I feel like one thing that might be worthwhile playing around with is just sort of fading this off, because that does feel like quite a harsh line. Right. So again, just kind of like just pushing back some of these things that are at the periphery. So I'm just going to do, again, a really harsh job of it, and then go through and probably like erase stuff a little bit. All right, again, I want it to be subtle. So again, the sort of textural atmosphere really helps a lot. Just kind of, again, not get us caught up in gradients and stuff, and gives us a little bit of visual noise as interest. But anyway, I think that's it. I think we're done. One fantasy character. All finished. Awesome. Thanks for watching.